Kalimera Filimu. Good morning, my friends, and welcome once again to the beautiful island of Cyprus. Although this morning's report is of a far more somber nature. Whilst out on my regular mountain walk, I get to see firsthand the devastating effect of the wildfire that raged through this valley, perilously close to the village of Drusha where I live. Now, this fire, which started maybe half a kilometre below us down the valley, was fueled by crisp, dry vegetation and a gusting gale force wind that blew that day. The wind was funneled up this valley, and this fire reduced everything to ash in its path. Thankfully, the majority of farmers had already cut, baled and stored their harvest of wheat that is grown every year to see their livestock through the winter. The local shepherds regularly graze their goats in this valley, and of course this food source is now lost to them until the following year maybe, when it will regrow after those desperately needed winter rains. But there are tracks in the ash here of those fleeing animals, petrified at the sight of that raging fire thundering up the valley behind them. Sadly, there are precious little trees left in this picturesque valley after previous fires tore through this pristine landscape, and now several more have been lost forever. Some of them mighty olive trees that have taken many hundreds of years to reach maturity. This region, which is so close to the Achaemenid Peninsula, would have been home to countless small mammals and reptiles such as the geckos and the snakes, which are synonymous with the wilderness of Cyprus. Now, those small mammals, geckos and snakes, wouldn't have stood a chance as this fire barreled up the valley. Now, in turn, the eagles that soar over this region have also lost that precious food resource. Just a week or so ago, I picked the delicious prickly pears, or babazodiga as they're known here in Cyprus, from this magnificent cactus. And here today I find it completely devastated by that fire too. And although it may eventually recover, it could take up to a decade for it to reach this degree of maturity again. The courageous firefighters of Cyprus battled for many grueling hours in an attempt to get this fire under control, whilst 3 helicopters ferried water back and forth in those huge buckets slung beneath them. Huge buckets containing some 700 gallons of water at a time. But with that gusting wind blowing off of the Mediterranean and the tinder dry vegetation, their efforts were a mere drop in the ocean. Having climbed many of the huge rocks around the villages of Drusha and Inia, I've always had my eye on the largest of them all. But I've been put off in the past by the dense vegetation that has always surrounded it. And this vegetation would have been home, of course, to many of those snakes that I mentioned earlier. But now that vegetation has been reduced to ash, I can now approach this rock, and I'm thinking to myself, where better to survey this scorched valley than from the very top. It's definitely one of the most challenging climbs I've experienced here on the island of Cyprus. To reach the summit, which is mere meters away, I'm going to have to scramble through these charred trees. Further evidence of the extent of this wildfire. This would have, of course, been home to many birds on the island, but it is eerily quiet today. There are thorns and bramble intertwined in this burnt tree, so going is incredibly slow indeed. But I've been dying to summit this rock since I first came to the village of Drusha, and whatever it takes, we will get there. I made the mistake of wearing shorts today, so these thorns are tearing at my legs, but the end is in sight. Crikey. Nothing worth achieving is ever easy. These thorns are clawing at me, and the agonising thing is that is the only way back through that thorny thicket. But here we are, just meters from the summit, and as I said, the fire raged at this height too. This tree is burnt to a cinder. But the summit of this rock that has eluded me for several years is just here. My hands are blackened with soot from the rocks and those bushes. But let's get up there. It's around 25 degrees today here in Cyprus in the end of October. Well, I've been dying to see the view from this enormous rock. Whilst I stand here at the highest point in this region, I can see far below me where that fire started. Just a small flickering flame that turned into an inferno that raced up this entire valley. The firefighters of Cyprus have their hands well and truly tied at the moment. This punishing drought and the lack of water in those reservoirs makes their job so difficult indeed. This of course highlights the need once again for massive investment in desalination. The vast Mediterranean is but a kilometre from here, and not a drop of that water can be used to fill these reservoirs here in Cyprus. On a lighter note, these simply glorious wildflowers that are growing oh so close to the summit of this enormous rock have remained unscathed, and they really are a delightful sight for a weary climber. My hands are black and my legs are torn to shreds from those wire-like brambles, but nevertheless, here we are. Bless you all.